Daniel chapter 9 is one of the most intriguing prophetic passages in the Hebrew Bible. The Moody Handbook of Messianic Prophecy rightly observes, "It'd be difficult to exaggerate the significance of this prophecy. Many would argue that this is the key text, both for understanding the person and the work of the Messiah, and also for comprehending the Lord's whole unfolding program for His chosen nation, Israel." As we'll clearly see from our study of this passage, the timing of the Messiah's first arrival is contained within the text. This bears repeating. When interpreted and calculated properly, Daniel 9:24-27 reveals the timing of Messiah's arrival. Today, we're going to need to get 3 keys. Why? Because when we have those 3 keys, they unlock the meaning of this passage. In the second video of this series, we'll use those 3 keys to unlock the meaning. First, let's read the passage, and then we're going to go back through the passage to find the keys and interpret the prophecy. For this text, I'm going to read from the NIV. I'll explain why later. The text says this: 77s are decreed for your people and your holy city to finish transgression, to put an end to sin, to atone for wickedness, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. Know and understand this. From the time the word goes out to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, until the Anointed One, the ruler, comes, there will be 7 sevens and 62 sevens. It'll be rebuilt with streets and a trench, but in times of trouble. After the 62 sevens, the Anointed One will be put to death and will have nothing. The people of the ruler who will come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. The end will come like a flood. War will continue until the end, and desolations have been decreed. He will make a firm covenant with the many for 1 7. In the middle of the 7, he'll put an end to sacrifice and offering. And at the temple, he will set up an abomination of causes desolation, until the end that is decreed is poured out on him. Now, some people believe Daniel 9:24-27 to be a mysterious passage. Why? Perhaps because math is involved. Indeed, math is one of the reasons why many people avoid the passage altogether. But when we avoid Bible passages, the meaning stays locked away or hidden from us. But did you know that the clear meaning of this passage can be properly understood? Just as any lock needs the right key to open it, the same is true for this passage. In fact, we're going to look at 3 keys. We'll phrase them as questions that need to be answered for us to get to the right meaning. So here are the 3 questions or keys needed for this passage. Number 1, what is the meaning of the Hebrew word that English Bibles typically translate to weeks? Number 2, how many days are in a biblical year? Number 3, what is the starting point of the calculation, which is the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem? Today, in video 1 of this series, we'll get our 3 keys. In the next video, we're going to use those 3 keys to unlock the timing of Messiah's arrival. You see, once we have the right answers to these 3 questions, we will have our 3 keys. So, first we need to determine the meaning behind the English word weeks, or in the translation we just read, the NIV, sevens. In this context, the Hebrew word just means a unit of 7. This is why the NIV uses 7 rather than weeks. Another name for a unit of 7 is a heptad. But as you know, we could have a unit of 7 of anything. 7 days, 7 weeks, 7 decades, 7 centuries. But we have other English words that indicate groups of something. For instance, a dozen. A dozen could refer to a dozen donuts, a dozen roses, a dozen bagels, or even a dozen eggs. We don't know exactly what a dozen refers to until we know the context. When we learn the context, then we know what we're looking for. For example, If I ask you to head down to the bakery and to grab a dozen for breakfast, you'll likely assume correctly that I'm talking about a dozen donuts. Or if I tell you to head down to the shop and get a dozen for their anniversary, you may rightly guess that I'm talking about a dozen roses. In Daniel 9, we read that 77s are decreed. That's again how the NIV translates it. The NIV translation recognizes that Daniel is referring to 70 units of 7. So what are the units of 7 that Daniel is referring to? They are years. Daniel writes that there are 70 weeks of years decreed. Not 7 weeks or 7 days, but 70 periods of 7 years. Now, why do we say this? Because of the context. Remember, context and usage is the best way to determine the meaning of any given word in the Bible. Now, here's the evidence that Daniel is referring to 70 units of 7 years, which is equivalent to 490 years. In the very next paragraph, in chapter 10, verse 2, Daniel says he was fasting for 3 weeks. Now, we know that he means 3 weeks of days because one cannot fast for 3 weeks of years, 21 years. So in the original language, which in this case is Hebrew, Daniel specifies in the Hebrew 3 weeks of days. This distinguishes the time, weeks of days, from the previous paragraph, which is weeks of years. So, 70 units of 7 years equals 490 years. We've discovered our first key to unlock the meaning of the passage. Let's move to our second key. The number of days in a biblical year. How many days are in a biblical year? The answer is 360 days, not the 365 that we're accustomed to today. How do we know this? Well, we have biblical evidence. The first piece of evidence is from the flood account in the book of Genesis. In chapter 7, verse 11, we read that the flood lasted 5 months. And in Genesis 7:24 and 8:3, we learn the flood lasted 150 days. Now, if 150 days is equal to 5 months, that means each month is 30 days long. We get that number by dividing 150 by 5. In the time of Daniel, there were 12 months on the annual calendar. So 12 months multiplied by 30 days is 360 days in a year. Now we have our second key to unlocking the meaning of Daniel 9:24-27. A biblical year is 360 days. Now, another piece of textual evidence for this comes from Daniel 7:25 in the book of Revelation. Daniel 7:25 is describing the terrible rule of the future Antichrist. It reads as follows: "He will speak words against the Most High and depress the holy ones of the Most High. He will intend to change religious festivals and laws, and the holy ones will be handed over for a time, times, and half a time." We learn from Daniel 7:25 that the future Antichrist will persecute the Jewish people, referred to by Daniel as the holy ones. And he'll do this for a certain period of time, that being a time, 2 times, and half a time. This is 3.5 years, and it corresponds to the second half of the tribulation period. Daniel's length of persecution by the Antichrist agrees with John's description of the length of persecution from the book of Revelation. For example, in Revelation chapter 13, verses 4 and 5, we read, "They worship the dragon because he gave authority to the beast. And they worship the beast, saying, 'Who is like the beast? Who's able to wage war against him?' A mouth was given to him to speak boasts and blasphemies. He was also given authority to act for 42 months. Now, if we take 42 months and multiply by 30, the number of days in a month, we get 1,260 days. 1,260 days divided by 360, and we get a biblical year. We get exactly 3.5 years. And this is what's really cool about this passage. In Revelation 12:6, John provides the exact number of days that Israel is kept safe during the tribulation period. He writes this: "The woman," that's Israel, "fled into the wilderness, where she had a place prepared by God to be fed there 1,260 days." Again, a biblical year consists of 360 days. That's our second key. Just one more key, and we'll have all three keys needed to understand Daniel's prophecy about the Messiah's arrival. What is that third and final key? Well, we have to answer the question, when was the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem? Verse 25 of Daniel 9 in the HCSB version says this, "Know and understand this. From the issuing of the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. It'll be rebuilt with a plaza and a moat, but in difficult times." And I just want to read the New International Version for you as well, so you can see the differences. It says this, "Know and understand this. From the time the word goes out to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the Anointed One, the ruler, comes, there will be 7 sevens and 62 sevens. It'll be rebuilt with streets and a trench, but in times of trouble." Once we know the date of this decree, we can use this as a starting point to calculate the date of Messiah's arrival. Now, there are 4 possible decrees from the Bible that historians and theologians have considered. The first one is Cyrus's decree in 539 BC. The second option is Darius's decree in 519 BC. The third option is Artaxerxes' first decree in 457 BC. And the fourth option is Artaxerxes' second decree in 444 BC. We can discard Cyrus's 539 decree as an option right away. Cyrus, his first decree was not about restoring and rebuilding Jerusalem. Rather, it was simply that Jewish captives were supposed to return from Persia back to the Promised Land. We can also discard the second option, which is Darius's decree of 519 BC. We run into the same problem. Darius's decree was for the Jewish people to begin rebuilding the temple, not to restore and rebuild the city of Jerusalem. Perhaps our third option, Artaxerxes' first decree in 457 BC. Maybe that's the decree that Daniel's making a reference to? Well, this decree called for the return of the exiles, the restoration of temple utensils, and permission to appoint civil leaders. But it said nothing about restoring and rebuilding Jerusalem. That brings us to our fourth option, which is Artaxerxes' second decree of 444 BC. What was this decree? Well, it's actually found in Nehemiah chapter 2. In the context of Nehemiah 2, Nehemiah is lamenting the reality that Jerusalem was in a state of destruction. It was devastated. The walls were in shambles. And this saddened Nehemiah, so much so that he dared to approach the king in a state of sadness. After Nehemiah approaches Artaxerxes, the king asks him why he's sad. Nehemiah tells him. But instead of punishing Nehemiah for being sad in his presence, King Artaxerxes actually decreed that he should go and rebuild Jerusalem. This is clearly read in verses 4 and 5 of Nehemiah chapter 2. It says this, "The king said to me, 'What is it you want?' Then I prayed to the God of heaven, and I answered the king, 'If it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in his sight, let him send me to the city in Judah where my ancestors are buried, so that I can rebuild it.' His request is granted, and Nehemiah returns to rebuild and restore Jerusalem. That's the edict that Daniel is referring to in this 9th chapter. No other decree fits the description to restore and rebuild Jerusalem. Now, some people want to use one of the other decrees, and they say that the numbers are just symbolic of long periods of time, but this doesn't make much sense. It's not the case. So, when did Artaxerxes give this decree in Nehemiah 2? The answer is in 444 BC. In fact, wouldn't it be nice if God graciously gave us the exact date of this decree in His Word? Thankfully, He has. Nehemiah 2:1 provides a time marker for Artaxerxes' edict. It says this, "In the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, when wine was brought for him, I took the wine and gave it to the king." When authors of the Bible, as well as some writers of rabbinic literature, do not specify an exact day of the month. They are typically referring to the first day of the month. So in this case, the date would have been Nisan 1, 444 BC. Now, with Nisan being a month on the Hebrew calendar, the calculation needs to be made in order to get a date on the Gregorian calendar. The Gregorian calendar has 365 days in a year and a different number of days per month. But when that calculation is made, we get the date of March 5th, 444 BC. That's the date of Artaxerxes' decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem. We now have our 3 keys, and we can get to work on unlocking the date of Messiah's arrival. We're going to do that on the second video of this series, and I hope you'll join us again. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe on your way out so that you're notified of all future videos here on the Life in Messiah YouTube channel. Until next time, Shalom.